Can you hear my voice?
Yeah. You are visible as well as audible.
Okay, thank you.
So shall we start, sir?
Yeah, please. Should I start sharing my PPT?
Just wait. So I would like to welcome the guest speaker for the second session. He is Dr. Ravindra Gauri, working as a professor, the Center for Natural Resource Management and Disaster Management. And today, he has decided to deliver his presentation on the climatic change and its implications in rural areas. Now, I would like to request one of the participant, Mr. Vivek Manik, working as the assistant professor, Department of Environmental Science at Gram Gita College, Shimur. Please introduce the today's guest speaker, Dr. Ravindra Gauri.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon to all the participants. And firstly, I am very much thankful to the respected course coordinator, Dr. Praveen Meshram, sir, and UGC HRDC Nagpur University, Nagpur, for giving me the opportunity to introduce our eminent guest speaker for this, the second session. Before we kick off our insightful session, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Ravindra S. Gauri, sir. Gauri sir is a renowned expert in the field of environmental science. Sir has completed his post-graduation and PhD in the subject of environmental science from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. His expertise he's been expertise in the natural resource management and conservation, watershed management, climate change, disaster management, rural development, geoinformatics, and water pollution monitoring and assessment are the some of his areas of expertise. Sir has been professionally affiliated to some organization like he is a life member of Indian Society for Ecological Economics, Indian Society of Remote Sensing, Indian Science Congress Association, and sir also connected with the Indian Environment Network, Conservation Alliance UK, and Kalinga Development Foundation. Sir occupies a number of unique positions like he is the member of National Advisory Committee on Climate Resilient Agriculture, Project Assessment Committee, member of Scientific Advisory Committee RTMNU Nanded, and he is also member of Policy Research Advisory Committee, and also he also acted as Dean, the School of Sustainable Development, NIR DPR. Sir has published 30 international and 27 international research papers. Sir has completed 5 major research projects, and two projects are undergoing. Sir has successfully supervised 13 PhD students and also completed the 4 consultancy projects. Sir attended 21 national and 8 international conferences and workshops, and sir also delivered 63 invited talks. We are truly honored to have you, Dr. Rajendra S. Gauri, sir, join us today for delivering the talk on climate change and its implication for rural India. And we can't wait to learn from their expertise and experience. Thank you so much, Dr. Ravindra Gauri, sir, for being part of this session. We are eager to hear your insights, and this stage is yours now, sir.
Continue.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Should I start sharing my presentation?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay, my presentation is visible to you all?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So thank you for a very elaborate introduction about me. And also thank you to Dr. Meshram sir for inviting me for this talk. Basically, I'm a person from a background where I started my career as an environmental scientist, but currently I'm working as a person who is actually working in the rural development sector. Uh, I belong to an institute called National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, which is a Ministry of Rural Development Institute, and where we basically work on the government programs and policies related to rural development. Where many initiatives, interesting initiatives, we have started recently, which is going to focus or change the shape of the rural India, what we actually assume. Like for example, certain new initiatives are there, like climate proofing of villages of India, which is something new, which is a concept which was actually propagated by me. Ministry of Rural Development has accepted that climate proofing of villages in India, and we have also started one project related to it, which is a national level project, and that is going to lay the foundation of climate proofing of villages India through a very important program, a flagship program of Government of India, which has been there for a very long time. That is called Mahatma Gandhi Narega. So this is what we have initiated. So being a person from environmental subject, I have traveled my path to this kind of level of institute where actually I am infusing the policy advocacy into the government system. So I hope many other interesting concepts will be also taken up in future. Even I am glad to open for your discussion and also from support from you. You can also advise me, suggest me some other initiatives which you feel is relevant for us. And climate adaptations basically and climate change is also very relevant for rural India, because you must be aware that most of the population of India still lives in rural India. So that is why I feel it is also very important as far as rural India is concerned, and we should be also addressing that issue. Uh, slide is moving, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine, thank you. So let us see what are the direct impacts of climate change. We are very much aware this is not a new subject. Extreme weather events and rising seas, loss of freshwater resources, glacial melts, ocean acidification, increasing weather extremes, which may be a constraint for our food security and nutrition in future, exacerbated poverty for vulnerable people around the world. Climate change also has major impacts in rural India, and it has affects all the components of life of humans, including livelihood and food security. So it's something not very new, I'm telling you, but we have to concentrate certain areas over here. Like for example, we all know that climate change is going to impact the natural resources in India, and the majority of the people in rural India are still dependent on the natural resources for their livelihood. In fact, 57% of India's population has only agriculture as their sole livelihood. And if you see the other people in rural India, they are either dependent on agriculture or allied activities, that is basically on natural resources. So still 70% of the livelihoods of India are in rural areas, and those are based on natural resources. So when the climate changes and it is going to impact the natural resources, so what is at the stake? The livelihoods are at stake. So 70% of India's livelihood are at stake. And you know what is the meaning of livelihood, how important it is for us. So that's why climate change, as far as rural area is concerned, is very an important issue. Secondly, if you see, the food security is very important because we have a very large population in India. And although now we are completely food secured, we are actually producing record production of food grains in India. But one thing is very lacking, that is the nutrition. Food is there, but nutrition is still not there in India. We have to realize that. That's a very important aspect we have to realize. This is another slide where I'm talking about the climate impacts and what are the probable impacts for the climate and what is going to be the overall impact. So you all know what are the impacts of climate change and what is going to be happen because of that climate change. But my focus is to concentrate on the overall impact. Like for example, sea level rise is directly going to increase the poverty, especially in the coastal areas, and those people who are dependent on their livelihood in coastal areas. Not only on fisheries sector I'm talking about, but also on those people who are residing in the coastal area. So temperature increase will directly relate to decline in productivity, overall production systems, all across agriculture, livestock, and fishes. Extreme weather events, if you take, it will be a threat to food and health security of hungry millions. This is how we try to relate. Changes in precipitation will arise new health problems. It will arise changing of entire cropping pattern in India. See, I'm again going to emphasize here, which I'm going to discuss in my coming slides. Rainfall is not going to change for India as far as the total amount of rain falling on India is concerned. India is going to have the same amount of rainfall, and changes in rainfall pattern is not new to India. Why? Because we get the monsoon from southwest, but that is the El Nino, because of the El Nino activity which occurs in the South American coast. So the intermittent drought and flood because of the El Nino and southern oscillation activity is not new to India. Was always there for thousands of years. It is there. So drought, famine, and floods are a recurrent phenomena in India. But the problem is that when the frequency and intensity of such extreme events increases, that becomes a problem. As I told you, maybe total amount of rainfall may not decrease, but the pattern of rainfall will change. The months of rainfall may change, the days of rainfall may change. And that's the problem we have to address. How we are going to adapt to that kind of changes. That is very important and relevant for us. This is a classic SERES scenarios, which is based on the AOGCM, that is atmospheric ocean global circulation models. So basically, there are different scenarios I've given. So basically, we talk about three different scenarios which are more extreme to each other. Take for example, B1 scenarios. We feel that the entire world is going to stop the climate change, or the people are going to get together. People are going to become very good. All economic activities will be there. Well cooperation will be there, and this the emission reduction will be there. But that is not an ideal scenario. It is not going to happen. We know the complexities, what is happening in the Paris Agreement, what has happened in the Glasgow Agreement. We know how it difficult to, to bring the entire global fraternity or the countries together to a common goal. Then we have A2 scenarios, that is where nobody is going to care about. Everybody is going to take their own path. And that is also may not happen, because the way we are progressing with the Paris and Glasgow Agreement, definitely we will have certain good agreements, and people will we feel that abide by that kind of agreement. That is the ideal scenario of A1 B scenarios. See, in all these scenarios, if you see the global warming and the change in temperature or this climate change is concerned, is not going to be differing much. Only things that the processes may be slowed down, isn't it? Like for example, take a example like if we decide that today itself we are going to stop all our global emissions, which is practically not possible. Still, climate change is going to occur for next 50 years. In that case, we all know that climate change is there and it is going to be there. We cannot change it. We cannot change it, but only that we can slow down the process of climate change so that we can get a time, and this time will help us to develop adaptations. And that is the main target, or the main motive, that all these countries getting together. Emission, becoming net zero economy is not that easy. You know that in recent Glasgow Agreement, what are the commitment given by different countries? The European nations and then USA has given 2050 as the target. China has taken 2060 as target, and India has given 2070 as their target. See how it is difficult, and it is not going to, because India also has a lot of aspirations. lot of increase will be there in energy sector in future. We cannot compromise with our, economic progress. So we have to progress economically, and simultaneously we have to concentrate on our emission reductions. Okay. So this is what the scenario is, that this is the another potential drought by the end of the century. As I told you, there is a India is not going to have a very high risk as far as the drought at the end of the century is concerned because of the climate change. So if you see India lies in the moderate category, isn't it? And if you see the other countries, especially our what do you call the enemy countries, they are in the danger zone, high risk category. Hello, what happened? Any issue? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I thought there is somebody wants to tell something, or it's just a disturbance. Okay, I will continue. So the world is distributed into different categories. So if you see India is concerned, the category we are at moderate risk, isn't it? So that means, the shortage of water, rainfall as drought is concerned will not be there much as far as the other nations are concerned because of the climate change. So it's a pretty good scenario for India. Let's see what will be the scenario in the next slide. Now it talks about the vulnerability of India to climate change. The vulnerability and risks are two different, isn't it? We can be vulnerable to the risk only when our situation is bad. So what are those situations which makes India vulnerable? You see, now India is in the red category. All other countries which were actually in a very bad state, as far as the drought is concerned, going to be there in future because of climate change. Now India is in a very, very danger zone, isn't it? Red category, and some other South Asian countries. Now, why this is there? You have to understand. Can anybody tell me what makes India vulnerable to the impact of climate change? Although the risk to the drought or the potential drought by the end of the century is not that great, it is we are at moderate risk. So what makes India vulnerable? Why should we be worried about that?
Because India is predominantly an agricultural country, and means most of the population is engaged in agriculture, especially the rural population.
Exactly. Yes. Any other thing? Can we change this vulnerability?
Industrial development. We are developing country.
Industrial development is everywhere there in all across the world. Okay, like similarly, on natural resources also many other countries are also dependent. China is also heavily dependent on natural resources. Many other countries also depend on natural resources. Yeah, it is one of the concerned issues. Okay, so let's see what makes India vulnerable. Okay, see, as far as the agriculture and climate change is concerned, our contribution to the greenhouse gas emissions as per the India is concerned, the majority comes from the energy sector and only 28% comes from the agriculture sector. Okay. If you see among the agriculture sector, rice cultivation and the enteric fermentation is the major cause, isn't it? So what is this enteric fermentation? It is because India has largest livestock population in this world. And all these livestock, they have ruminant stomach. And a ruminant stomach means 4 chambers of stomach. Digestion takes place in 4 different stages. In that, lot of emission of methane gas occurs. And because of the enteric fermentation, the methane gas emission, we contribute a lot as far as the livestock is concerned from India. The next part is rice cultivation. Because rice requires a lot of standing water, a lot of emission activities take place during that process. So can we compromise over here? We cannot compromise because it is directly related to our food security. We cannot stop growing rice. We cannot stop, having livestock in large numbers. Yes, we can actually reduce the number of livestock, make it more productive, so that good management practices can reduce the emission. But livestock is our safety net. As I already told you, India as recurrent phenomena drought, famine, and flood. In that case, when such crop failure occurs, livestock is the only safety net for the Indian farmers, and that is why we have a habit of having large number of livestock. But now what has happened? The things have changed. This livestock, which were actually climate resilient, and they used to help us to tide over the crop failure, they are not there in large number now. Those native species are lost. Now we have mostly the hybrid species where such resilience doesn't occur. So what is the point of keeping such a huge number of livestock population where we cannot feed cannot give the good fodder quality? When the good fodder quality is not there, proper fodder quality is that, production will to decline or going to suffer. So in that means there's our livestock management practices are actually inefficient. So we have to increase the efficiency of this livestock production so that emission can be reduced. Rice cultivation, yes, there are some activities like we can go for those rice varieties. Now people have started developing those climate resilient rice varieties where the standing water requirement is will be less or may not be there. We have an Indian Rice Research Institute over here near in Hyderabad, where they have actually developed some of the varieties. Now they are going to put it on trial, where the standing water for rice is not required. So let's hope that we can curtail it. But can we right now can you compromise with our this emissions? No, we cannot do it because our climate change policy does not allow us to do that. India is not going to commit as far as rural sector is concerned. So it is very clear that no onus will be there on the rural sector, on the farmers of India for reducing the emissions. We cannot compromise here. We cannot compromise with our food security. We cannot compromise with our livelihood security of the large number of population of India. Okay. So this is what India uh, uh, agriculture, as I have told you, it's although contribution to GDP is only 15%, but majority of the livelihoods of India still in the rural areas. It is going to impact the productivity, and there will be a lot of shifting of cropping pattern in India. Probability of crop loss will be very high unless until we change ourselves. Okay, so it is not that India, see, everywhere it is a problem. See, always there is a blessing in disguise. Always there is a blessing in disguise, because when something happens as far as climate change is concerned, it is not that if we change the pattern of our agriculture systems and all these things, definitely we can overcome. There are strategies. People are working on those strategies. Climate resilience is one of the strategies. I'm also part of the National Advisory Committee on Climate Resilient Agriculture. We are also working on those strategies, developing those strategies. Maybe in recent time, DST is going to come up with a major program where a lot of proposals will be asked from the researchers all over the India to work upon climate resilient strategies. So this is what is going to happen in future. So let us be prepared for that. Let us prepare how to become climate resilient, how to develop adaptations. See, one thing I would like to tell you that if you see this entire decade, that is 21st century, this first decade of this 21st century went on convincing the people that climate change is a reality. We wanted to establish the science behind the climate change, and to make aware the people, yes, and accept that climate change is going to happen. The next decade of this 21st century went on, bringing people together, agreeing to the people, like this Paris Agreement took place in 2015, that we want to reduce the mitigation. We have to reduce the emissions. We have to increase the mitigations and reduce the emissions. So this is what we were trying to do in this second decade of the 21st century. So mitigations, reducing emissions was the efforts, because we wanted to slow down the climatic processes. But now this third decade, that is from 2021 to 2030. Why? Because 2030 is the year where we want to achieve our sustainable development goals. I think you are all aware about the 17 sustainable development goals. This is what we're going to achieve in 2030. So this entire decade now is going to be devoted for climate change adaptations. Please, I am repeating, it is for climate change adaptations, and the entire world fund is going to be diverted for developing adaptation processes. Also, the World Bank has now United Nations have also come up with special fund, that is climate adaptation funds. Now people are actually started utilizing that. People are contributing that fund. So I hope we need to capitalize on this opportunity. So all your resources should be diverted on climate change adaptations in future now. This is the decade we have to work together. Lot of proposals and lot of work and lot of innovations are required. Lot of activities are required to develop adaptation practices, climate resilient practices. And that is how all the funding is going to be channelized. Even the DST is going to channelize in future in that way. So we have to ready for that. Okay. So if you see the impact of climate change is concerned, there are three different ways it is going to affect it. First is a direct effect on the crop, that is physiology, phenology, and morphology. Indirect effect, that is soil fertility, irrigation, availability of pest, floods, drought, and sea level rise. Then third is the social economic aspect, food demand, cost and benefit, policy, trade, farmers' response. Okay. So all this required, different kind of strategies, human intervention, adaptation strategies, mitigation strategies, and all is goes on, increasing agriculture or sustaining the agriculture productivity and targeting and reducing the vulnerabilities. So when I come to the rural areas, again, I will now come to the point how India is vulnerable. So first thing, we all know that population is the major problem in India. Second thing, you already pointed out our dependency on the natural resources for our livelihood. That is second aspect. The other aspects are there, like we have, very, very high level of poverty in rural area. We have there's disparity is also very high. We are richest of rich in India, poorest of poor in India. Majority of farmers are either small landholders or they are marginal farmers. So they have very, very low adaptive capacity towards an incident like climate change. So how they are going to adapt? It is very difficult to make them adapt. Big farmers, you all know that all rich people who had, or who had regular income, there was no issue for them as far as the COVID was concerned. But all those people who are on marginal line, they are all suffered because of the COVID. Similarly here, all these marginal farmers, small farmers, it will be very difficult and challenging to develop adaptations for these farmers. Make them ready for the adaptation, make them ready for the change. That's the real challenge that makes India one. We have illiteracy problem, we have poverty problem, we have health problems. Still health.
Excuse me, sir, slides are not visible.
No, I am not moving the slide. I'm just talking to you. Okay. So these are the issues what makes India vulnerable. We have to, so the focus is that how to make or work on the sectors which can reduce vulnerability to India. So it is instead of directly addressing the problems, we have to address those issues from where the problem arises. I think that is the way we have to work. How we are going to reduce the vulnerability. That is the challenge for us. See, as I told you, there are certain problems with the agriculture productivity is concerned because of change in the climate. Rice, wheat, sorghum, maize, the production is going to be affected. Has already been there. Some of our ICR research, they have worked on the different scenarios, and practically they have worked on the crops, projected scenarios on the crops. But there are certain crops, like take example like chickpea, soybean, and potato in India. They are going to benefit. They are going to benefit. Productivity will be increased in India for this crop because of the climate change. But only thing is that we have to change the cropping pattern and cropping areas of these crops. If you plan properly, change the cropping pattern and area of these crops in India, we have to shift the potato belt out areas, we have to shift the soybean belt and areas, we have to shift the chickpea belt and areas in India. If we can properly manage that, certainly we can get more productivity out of this. So as I told you, there is always a blessing in disguise. So when the climate change is concerned, and when we talk about the adaptation strategies, always there will be some opportunities also. We have to understand those opportunities, we have to work upon this opportunity, we have to capture these opportunities. Another thing which very positively I can tell you about India. See, we have experienced around 24 major droughts since 1877 to 2005. 6 severe droughts were there. Those years I already mentioned from 1877 to 2009. The most severe drought which India witnessed in the recent time was the 1972 period. Actually, that was the time when people started thinking about watershed management, water conservation activities, and that is why in early 80s we started watershed management in India. So that was a turning point. That 1972 drought for India. If you see the recent droughts in India, 2002 and 2009 had a very severe drought in India. After 2009, there was not a no such severe drought which occurred in India. Only 2012 there was a minor drought, but after that there was no other drought which occurred in India. If you see the case scenario of 2002 and 2009, 2009 drought, the rainfall deficiency was more. Even the total area affected was also more in 2009. But the food grain production loss is concerned was quite less as compared to 2002. So irrespective of deficiency of rainfall and total affected areas, the total loss in food grain production reduced from 24% to 15%. So how this magic occurred? Because of the proper agro management practices. Because during that time from 2002 to 9 onwards, we have taken a lot of activities related to water use efficiency, management, drip irrigation, etc. So that's why that change was brought into. So what does this mean? So irrespective of droughts which may occur in India in future, if you have proper preparedness and planning, good management practices, we can actually overcome the impact of that drought. Listen, that is what we call. We should have a preparedness planning for such activities. Even in recent time, if you are seeing the disaster which is happening in India, the Amphan cyclone, the recent this cyclone, Biparjoy cyclone which occurred in India, the losses were not that great as compared to the earlier times. Why it has happened? Because of a poor preparedness planning. That means India now have learned to live with the disaster. So India can manage disaster. That's the message we have to give everywhere. So with proper preparedness planning, definitely we can also overcome the impact of not only drought but also the climate change. And that is why, as I told you in the earlier my time, here comes my idea of drought proofing or the climate proofing of villages in India. How we can make those villages climate or drought proofing in India. If we can able to do that, definitely drought will not be going to affect in India. That's what I told you. In future, climate change is going depends. The impact depends how we are going to respond to that climate change activity. And I'm fully convinced that there is no dearth of technology, there is no dearth of innovation. Only the how we implement those kind of technology, innovations, and policies that matters a lot. So these are the key challenges of India. Agriculture, as I told you, 2/3 of India agriculture is still rain-fed. Around 68% of Indian villages are constantly under drought, one way or the other. Water scarcity there's a problem. Overstretched natural resources, lack of primary health facilities, high level electricity poverty. All this makes India highly vulnerable. So the focus should be to work on this vulnerability. And what is about how about the rural poor communities? They are unaware of the looming threat of climate change. Their directly dependence on sensitive sectors like natural resources for their livelihoods. And overall, they have very, very low adaptive capacity. So the focus should be how we are going to work upon to increase the adaptive capacity of this rural poor. It is not just agriculture. It is also depends how we are going to increase the livelihood aspects and possibilities for these rural people. How we are going to develop the climate resilient livelihoods for these people. So this is the new concept. The days are gone for integrated farming system. It is not just integrated farming system. Now the focus is on integrated livelihood systems, integrated models of livelihood system. That is the more focus today. What is going to the future villages concept in India? Future is that we should have circular or bioeconomy in the villages. That's the future concept. This is how we see the future of India in the villages, isn't it? It's very sad to say that still today we don't have any kind of rural development policy in India. We don't have agriculture policy in India, although we have national water policy which was there since 2012. But as per rural development policy, we don't have any policy. We don't have any foresight for rural development planning. That foresight has to be developed. We need to foresee how our villages will be there in future. and how they are going to respond to the climate change. That planning should occur. And I think we all should work on our researches, our study should all focus on those kind of foresight planning. This is how we should, basically work upon. So this is the three different ways how you address the climate change: mitigation, geoengineering, and adaptation. Mitigation directly focus on emissions that we have been doing or did for the last decade. Geoengineering, one of the very promising area, but the problem is that this is very climate engineering or geoengineering is very difficult as far as the countries of India is concerned. Such changes will be helpful. I'm not underlying or underrating this aspect, but definitely it is not going to on mass scale. It is very difficult, but adaptation is basically possible. That is very near and easy to for us because they are going to directly address the impacts. So this is why that's what I said. Focusing on adaptations is very important as per the rural area. So what is basically an adaptations and what are its components? So adaptation basically refers to an adjustment in ecological, social, and economic systems in response to actual or expected climate stimuli and their effects or impacts. It refers to changes in processes and practices and structure of to moderate potential damages or benefit opportunities arising from the climate change. So basically, we have to change our processes and practices as a response to the climate change stimuli. And also we have to work upon the opportunity associated with the climate change. Like for example, the potato belt is going to be shifted. That means we can have a good potato belt cultivation areas in our India. Can we introduce a gene which can produce protein in the potato? Because potato is a very good crop, high productive crop. It can grow in very poor soil conditions also. But the problem is that it lacks protein. So if we can introduce a gene where the protein can be introduced in potato, if that we are able to do that, fantastic. Potatoes can be grown up in many large number of areas in our country. It's going to solve the food security, isn't it? And that should not be the only way. There could be any other ways. So when you address climate change, the mitigation and adaptation should be complementary to each other. And this is basically a challenge for the policymaker: how to adapt to climate change and how to make a transition to a low carbon growth pathway. These are the two challenges before our policymakers in future. And this is how we can make policy adequacy for them. And that's what we try to make, isn't it? So I actually request all the people who are attending this training program, you're coming from different universities and different colleges, your focus should be on these kind of researches instead of just taking some problem of pollution and telling that, yeah, this is a polluted water, this is not polluted water. This is the days have gone now. We have to work on this kind of problems, and there the funding is going to be there in future. I can tell you. So adaptation to climate change for rural India basically refers to impact assessment, monitoring, early warning system, land use planning, upgrading physical infrastructure, adapting farming systems, expanding and improving irrigation system, diversifying crop production structures, emerging drought and moisture risk, breeding plants and animals with greater pest resistance, tolerance to new uh, stress factors, insurance and new risk transfer mechanism, adaptations in rangeland and wildlife management. These are all the issues related to climate adaptations in rural areas. So what are the key sensitive sectors on the rural areas? Agriculture, water and health. If you are working on this sector, other sectors will take care of themselves. It will take care of itself. I know there are other sectors also very important, but these are the key sensitive sectors as far as climate is concerned. If you target these sectors, it is not a very difficult. Just we have to work upon reducing vulnerability to all these three sectors. That's all. If you are working to reducing the vulnerability across these sectors, definitely we can overcome the impact of climate change, and India can become really a kind of an economically progressive country. This is what is there. So adaptation agriculture, I'm listing out some of the adaptations measures here. These are not limited to this. Okay, like for example, increased in crop yield, irrigation demand. These are going to the impacts. Then adaptation and erosion controls, development of early warning system, conservation of management. All this will there. I'm going to leave this slide. I'm not going to read it out. I'm going to focus in other major issues. So national missions on climate change. So there are total 8 national missions on climate change in India. But sadly, we don't have any kind of program or flagship program or scheme related to climate change in India. Although we have a lot of different missions. Already I mentioned some of the missions given over here as far as the climate change is concerned. These are the certain opportunities. Yeah. Another thing which I want to say that there are two technologically advanced when the climate change situation or any kind of catastrophic failure or disaster happens in any country or any society. So there are two choices with us. First, that we can wait until the systematic deficiency, distortion, cessations occurs, and let us hope that system will take care of it on its own. Then that's what we do in India. We wait for the disaster to happen. We wait for that something bad happens, and then we try to find out the solutions for that. The other way is that as a technologically advanced society, we can actually provide some checks and balances, correct the distortions prior to the catastrophic case. And I think here what Gandhiji wants to tell, that we have to go for proper preparedness and planning. And this is how only the things will going to help. So instead of waiting, like for example, today when I was trialing in my building, I was coming through the lift. The fan was making noise. It was not today, 2-3 days it was making noise. I complained it, but nobody was scared. When today while coming out of my society, I stopped at the help desk and asked them that what last 3 days and complained, nobody's changed. So that person responded, so let the fan stops and then we will work upon it. That means we want to wait for the disaster or the failure to happen, and then we will going to respond. This is the way how we are going to work? No. This is what we want to do in our country. We want to have preparedness planning. Unless and we don't have preparedness planning, we cannot work upon those kind of solutions. So one of these success stories I'm going to read out from Slack. As I told you, whatever I'm telling to you, it is not just the gyan or knowledge which I'm propagating to you, but it is through our own work. Recently, we did a project called Sustainable Livelihood and Adaptation to Climate Change. It was around 4 years project, which was funded by World Bank. It was a kind of technical assistant to National Rural Livelihood Mission, that is called DNRLM, Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission. The major objective was to improve adaptive capacity of rural poor, engaged in farm-based livelihoods, and to cope with climate variability, and also to establish a large-scale proof of concept on integrating community-based climate change planning and adaptation. So here, as for the first objective concern, we actually developed or gave a lot of different, climate resilient livelihood activities to the people, how to cope up with the climate variability. And in the second stage, we also developed one of the planning tool that is called climate adaptation planning at the village level, how it can go up. So we did a pilot for this. This was a kind of a pilot project for the country. Recently, we concluded in 2020. What are the component of this project? We actually there are different components of this project, and our more main focus was on the capacity building, knowledge dissemination, and policy inputs, documentation, etc. So we also tried to scale up the community-based climate adaptation practices. This was the pilot, as I told you. These were done in Madhya Pradesh and Bihar. Bihar, we had Madhubani and Gaya, because Madhubani is a flood-prone area and Gaya is a drought-prone area. Similarly, in Madhya Pradesh, we have Shivpur as a drought-prone area and Mandla as a flood-prone area. And this project was implemented in association with the two other projects of flagship programs of Government of India. First one was Mahatma Gandhi Narega project, and second was the Mahila Kisan Sashakti-karan program. So with the conversion of these two projects, we actually implemented these projects in 484 pilot villages in across these two states. What was the approach here? wanted to have community empowerment and participatory decision making. Want to create a cadre of climate smart para-professionals, that is community resource persons. Participatory planning in climate adaptation. Then also we wanted to develop a lot of partnership and convergence among different flagship programs of Government of India. So what was actually our perception of climate resilient farmer in this project? It was related to, like, we wanted to have healthy soils in India. Healthy means fertile soils. You must be knowing that the problem of Indian agriculture soil is that they are highly deficient in carbon. So organic carbon has to be increased in the soil. Okay. Stress tolerant seed varieties, which are climate resilient. Climate resilient agriculture technologies, weather information. In this regard, we actually installed in these 484 villages the automated weather stations. Putting an automated weather station in villages in India is not a big job. Automated weather stations, you all must be knowing, it costs hardly between 1 to 1.5 lakhs, isn't it? But the kind of input which you'll get because of the automatization is going to be very, the benefit is going to be huge, because based on these automated weather stations, we can have weather link agro advisories for the farmers, which can be given on daily or weekly basis to these farmers. That is local advisories. Local because the weathers or the climatic scenario or the weathers are different in India. So every villages, they should know what is going to happen, how the weather is going to change in next 4 days. What are the activities they should take up? How much irrigation they should do it? What kind of pest management practices they should implement? What kind of soil management practices they should take up? These all considered related to agro advisories. Then we also talked about introducing farm mechanisms so that treasury can be reduced at the farm level, and those farm equipments can be made available on a cooperative or self-help groups, through self-help groups, which is not affordable to the marginal small farmer. Marginal small farmers cannot afford this farm mechanization, so this can be made available to them. So we had a lot of custom hiring centers for them, and this custom hiring centers was one of the highlight of one of the projects, highly successful. And those custom hiring centers was managed profitably by the women SHG groups. Then we worked upon irrigation facilities, micro irrigations, precise irrigation, precision irrigation. We worked on diversified livelihood. That means the farmer should not be dependent on a particular kind of agriculture, only agriculture activity as a livelihood. We should have diversified agriculture or livelihood activity for them. Like for example, beekeeping, sack farming, mushroom farming. We can have other different, supply chain management activities in the farming level. That also we worked on. We worked on the ecology, improving the ecology of the area. We worked on the weather-based index insurance systems, which was very successful in giving proper, compensatory compensation for the farmers as far as insurance is concerned. Finance, we also did sort of plans for different financial level where the financial input is actually required, what kind of activities it is required. So basically, you see about flag interventions, we initially planned around for 64 interventions as climate change intervention, but when we narrowed down to only 25, because depending on the area, the local acceptance, the climate of that area, we felt that these are the 5 which would be acceptable or more required in those areas. So what are those interventions? As per the production system is concerned, we went for crop diversification, crop rotation, seed bank, fodder bank, non-chemical fertility management, non-chemical pest management, etc. Seed bank is going to be major activity for future villages in India. I'm telling you, this is the one of the best business model. I'm telling you, seed bank is going to be high demand in the villages in India. People should work on those seed banks. एक अच्छा business मैं बता रहा हूँ आपको. Ecological systems, irrigation efficiency increase किया हमने. We tried to increase the groundwater recharge. Aquifer, we worked on aquifer management, watershed management, grazing land management. On financial system, we worked on access to credit, weather-based index insurance, the access to credit to the SHG women group. Technology and knowledge system, we worked on automated weather station, ICT services, local weather-based agro advisories, crop water budgeting, adaptation planning, that is climate adaptation planning, village level. I'm going to discuss in a brief what is that climate adaptation planning at village level, policy formulations. This is one of the manual we actually produced for this activity. If you are interested to read this manual, you can go to our website that is called e-Prasikshan, e-Gram Prasikshan website. You can note it down. E-Gram Prasikshan. It is a platform through our institute where we provide a lot of different online courses. So one of the courses is on climate change. We have also course on biodiversity management. So you can go through where this material is available for you. We also developed a lot of different case studies. Those case studies were actually published in different levels. We have around 7 to 8 publications, good publications, and I'm glad to say that one of our mushroom cultivation activities as a potential adaptation strategy for climate resilient and empowerment of rural India in BR won a national level prize recently. The prize was related to the Prime Minister 10-point agenda. Under the it was actually this competition was arranged by National Disaster Management Authority. So they consider climate change as a disaster and how we are going to address that. So one of the strategies, this case study on mushroom cultivation won a national level prize. So this is the level we try to intervene. And slack impact study in BR. So what are the different adaptations under different categories: ecology, finance, and technology. So these are some of the techniques like which were more adapted. If you see, like some of the techniques like Amrit Pani, soil testing, insurance, loan, weather-based agroadvisory, climate adaptation planning, integrated pest management, integrated nutrition management, livestock, integrated farming system, all these things and alternative land, all these were more adapted. But there are some techniques which were not adapted more by the farmers. I think because of the lack of the awareness, or the farmers are not willing to change. So we have to work upon future on these other technologies also, where the adaptation can be more in future. These are the policy briefs which we did for the different states, and government of these 2 states are accepted our policy as a brief. These are the different interventions. I listed it out. What kind of climate adaptations we are going to achieve because of the interventions, and what could be the learning outcomes through this. So here I listed, I am going to leave the slide with you. I will ask the organizer of this program to give this slide to you. So out of here, I have given 64 interventions. We have used 25 interventions in our project. These are different interventions I have given here. Management practices also different interventions are given. Pest and disease management different interventions are given. Cropping system also, alternate livelihood also. All these farm mechanisms, technological interventions. I think we should need to work upon those developing such interventions. This is the tool which I was talking about. It was related to climate adaptation planning. That is how we are going to do climate adaptation at the village level. So we basically devised a decision-making tool which was participatory, and it can be used at the village level. So what was basically the tool? The tool had to undergo a field level exercise for 2-3 days to participatory planning. 8 different tools were used. I'm going to talk about what these tools are. Technical consultation with experts and institutions we took place. We also had linking interventions and addressing the climate risk. We have already given all the different kind of interventions over there, how they are going to link to address the climate change. We discussed on the livelihood portfolio management of the people. As I told you that the future is of not integrated farming system. It is only integrated livelihood portfolio management, integrated livelihood systems. So that is how we are going to work in future. Create and generate awareness among the climate change and livelihood issues. So this was the tool. So basically, the tools actually is related to understanding the interrelationship between climate impacts, livelihood strategies at the local level. It actually helps us to articulate the climate risk and identify the measures to address them. For example, we ask the farmers what are the different resources of natural resources they have at the village level, and how they are going to impact the climate change, and what are the resources or the impacts which are going to affect their livelihood. So what are their livelihoods? So we provide a different livelihood portfolio for them. We also discussed upon what is going to be the profit out of each livelihood, what is going to input for the livelihood, and what is going to be the profit out of this livelihood. They can understand which livelihood is important for them and what is going to be more profitable to them. So, and in the event of failure or affecting this livelihood because of the climate change, what are the risks associated with them? We address all the risks associated with those livelihoods. And while going through the risks, we also looked upon what are the different uh, opportunities or different kind of strategies they can take up to address this kind of risk. And in the event of uh, even if these strategies are not going to work for them, not available to them, so what alternatives will be available to them? So that alternatives also were given to them, and this was all devised in a exercise through an exercise, and it was put up in a matrix. As I told you, if you're more interested into this learning this kind of tool, you can go to our website at egramprecision.com, and actually e-precision, you can type it, you can go NIDPR website is there, NIDPR gramswaraj.nidpr.org.in. So if you can't Google, you can go through there. In that climate change, one course is there. In that, this entire tool is described how to utilize that at the village level. This approach is to identify the main livelihood of the community, address the multi-dimensional view of vulnerability of livelihood to the climate change, deal with the perception of climate risk and the livelihood, note the typical responses identified to the climate risk, and at the end, this tool should be able to suggest to the people the no regret or low regret responses related to production technology, knowledge, finance, and ecological aspect. This is the exercise, very simple exercise we did. We had a study related to background information collecting regarding the village. We had a satellite imagery for the village. We had a participatory satellite image interpretation with the villagers. We had a transact walk across the village to identifying the resources and their mapping. We also prepared one seasonal livelihood calendar for the people of the villages. So different communities had different kind of livelihood seasonal calendar. So either you can combine the community each other, or we can discuss separately with different communities. Then identifying the climate risk or vulnerability associated with those kind of livelihoods, and then ranking the livelihoods based on the perception of the community, because people may have different perceptions. Then ranking the livelihood based upon the net profit of each livelihood, then ranking the livelihood based on the climate risk. And this together, these three ranking will give a kind of developing an adaptation matrix, which can be counted output matrix. Okay, this is a kind of just 2 to 3 days exercise. This is how the planning is done. The village level, you can see this picture. We are discussing all this. The matrix has been prepared over here, and this people are discussing with this villages. Basically, this is how the climate adaptation matrix looks like. This is the livelihood. By serial number, we give it. Climate risk, we try to give it. No preparedness, same preparedness, or all preparedness. What is the capacity to change, and what is the measures they are going to undertake. This is what the climate adaptation matrix. Let me see the output matrix. How the output matrix should look like. This is a kind of reporting or output matrix. For example, this example is given for Shivpur block. The livelihood measure of the major livelihood for that block. One of the livelihood is that, not major, is Bajra, Urad and Sesame cultivation. So what are the climate risks associated with the cultivation of Bajra, Urad and Sesame? Delayed in rainfall, early withdrawal of monsoon, long and dry spell on the offset of monsoon, then pest and diseases. So what are the adaptation options given for them? Short duration, cropping, ridge, furrowing, irrigation, solar pump for the early withdrawal monsoon. So these are different options which are given to them. Then out of those options, what are the specific measures they can actually adopt or take place, or they can take these measures, undertake these measures? What is this ability of those measures? What is the capability to undertake those measures? Then after that, in case of they are not able to take up any of these options, then what are the diversification alternatives for them? This has to be given to them. This should really happen not only with villagers. We have to do a lot of experts consultation. We have to contact the different agriculture department, animal husbandry department, the planning department, the people working in the rural sectors. We have to discuss with them, and then we have to give the alternative livelihoods, because the alternative livelihood will somehow be coming up through convergence of some any of the government schemes, programs, whatever it is there. So this, even the government people who are actually implementing these schemes and programs, they will have a knowledge now what alternative or diversification we have to go for these villages. They will also have a ready-made plan for them, and this is how it will help us to give a no regret or low regret decision making for the farmers. So this actually planning should happen before the cropping season or before the livelihood in the villages starts. So like for example, take in the month of May or June, we have to start this. So this will help us to take a decision. For example, in case of delayed and monsoon, what kind of measures they have to undertake. If they're not able to undertake this such measures, then what are diversification or alternatives they can take up. This is what help us to develop or safeguard the livelihood in India. So this is what in short is there. This is the kind of, you see, agro weather advisory services, how it works. The weather advisory package of practices advisory can be, curative advisory can be given, livestock advisory can be given, soil advisory will be given, and this actually comes as a SMS to these people. You can see the SMS over here, right side, and this SMS is actually typed in the villages. It is given over here, and how the weather should be behaving in next 15 days. That data is also given here in the right side corner. So this is how our future villages should look like, and many people villages are actually practicing that. So because of this, our slack intervention project in Bihar and Madhya Pradesh, it is not our study, but it is independent study. People have done that, and they have said that because of only one intervention, that is agro-based weather advisory system, 50% production losses were reduced in these villages. This is how a small change can make a larger change, isn't it? Lead to larger change. This is what planning should be done at the climate village level. So thank you very much for patience listening to me. I have still some time with me. I have kept it for the interaction. If I am not delaying you for going for a lunch, I can take up some questions from you. Thank you.
Now I would like to request participant, please ask one by one questions.
Sir, can I ask in Hindi, sir?
Yes.
कृषि में जो कार्बन तत्व कम हो गए हैं, तो उसे बढ़ाने के लिए क्या उपाय करने चाहिए सर?
अच्छा सवाल है कि उसके लिए हमें क्या करना चाहिए कि हमें वो एक्टिविटीज, आप थोड़ा अपना माइक बंद करेंगे सर?
ओके।
तो अभी कार्बन बढ़ाने के लिए सॉइल में क्या करना चाहिए हमें? हमने देखिए वो इंटरवेंशन के अंदर में सॉइल मैनेजमेंट प्रैक्टिसेस के अंदर बहुत सारे अलग अलग जो है इंटरवेंशंस दिए हुए हैं जो क्लाइमेट रेजिलियंस की तरफ ले जाते हैं हमें। तो उसमें से जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन कंटेंट करने के लिए हमें क्या करना कि हमें जो है कंपोस्टिंग करके जो है सॉइल में ऑर्गेनिक मैन्योर को बढ़ाना चाहिए। हमें टिलिंग, नो टिलेज एक्टिविटी, टिलेज की जरूरत नहीं है, हर बार हमको टिलेज करने का जरूरत नहीं है सॉइल में से, क्योंकि जैसे हम टिलेज करेंगे तो क्या होगा, हमारा जो सॉइल है वो एक्सपोज हो जाएगा सनलाइट के लिए, उसमें क्या होगा, उसका कार्बन उड़ जाएगा उसके अंदर से, ठीक। तो इसीलिए जो है हमें क्या करना है कि वो बार बार टिलेज करने का जरूरत नहीं है। हम लोग जो है वो ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग कर सकते हैं। हम लोग जो है वो क्या बोलते हैं उसको, आजकल क्या एक नया वो निकला हुआ है, जीरो बजट नेचुरल फार्मिंग, है ना, उसी तरह का कुछ एक्टिविटी ले सकते हैं। तो बेसिकली क्या है कि हमें कार्बन इंक्रीज करने वाला एक्टिविटीज बढ़ाना है, न्यूट्रिशन मैनेजमेंट या सॉइल मैनेजमेंट प्रैक्टिसेस को बढ़ाना जरूरी है उसके, ठीक है, तभी हम अपना कार्बन जो है इंक्रीज हुआ है। कार्बन इंक्रीज होगा तो क्या होगा, आपका सॉइल फर्टिलिटी इंक्रीज होगा। मतलब सॉइल फर्टिलिटी जो होता है सिर्फ सॉइल के अंदर न्यूट्रिएंट्स पहुंचाने से नहीं होता है, वो न्यूट्रिएंट्स अवेलेबल फॉर्म में होना जरूरी है। उसके लिए क्या करते हैं आपके माइक्रोज, बैक्टीरियाज, ये हेल्प करते हैं आपका। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल नाइट्रेट हो गया, ये नाइट्रेट फॉर्म में अवेलेबल करने के लिए जो है आपको वो कौन करता है उसको, आप जो यूरिया डालते हैं, यूरिया जो है कभी भी प्लांट ऑब्जॉर्व नहीं कर सकता, उसको जो नाइट्रेट फॉर्म में लाने के लिए बैक्टीरिया ही हेल्प करता है, तभी जो प्लांट उसको ऑब्जॉर्व कर सकता है ना। तो बैक्टीरिया कैसे पनपेगा, जब ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन होगा सॉइल के अंदर, तभी बैक्टीरिया पनपेगा, है ना। तो ये सारा ये सॉइल फर्टिलिटी से रिलेटेड चीज है, मुझे लगता है हम ऐसे कुछ स्टेप्स इसमें ले सकते हैं, ठीक है। और कुछ पूछना चाहेंगे सर?
Sir, one question from my side, sir.
या प्लीज।
Sir, you said that in India food is enough, but it is not nutritious. So to
Yeah.
make it yes. So how we can increase the nutrition in the food?
या न्यूट्रिशन कंटेंट इंक्रीज करने के लिए हमें जो है हमारा जो है डाइटरी इसमें इंटेक में थोड़ा चेंजेस लाना जरूरी है. So how we are going to make that changes? See, nutrition means it's not just food grains which you take. We should see what kind of protein intake is going into that. What kind of vitamins, what kind of minerals also going to that. So we have to go for different variety of food, different kind of foods. No, just growing rice and wheat is not going to help us. We have to grow for good production of pulses. We have to go for good production of meat-based products like poultry, eggs, etc. These are very much important. So this also should be available to the India's population as rice and wheat is concerned. Have you ever heard about distribution of nutritious food to the people? We heard about distribution of free rice, free wheat, and all this, but never nutritious food is not distributed, isn't it? So we have to focus on that nutrition increasing activities where we have to make people aware that yes, this is what is required. So what kind of intake we should take as a food? Intake of food should not be only concentrated on taking cereal crops, but also other food items.
Sir, that's why I'm asking you, because even doctor today says that nothing is there in the your food. Even one apple, what was in old days, we are not having such a nutritious apple, and for that, if you want to, means it is the replacement of 20 apple. If you want today the same nutritious nutrition you want, so for that means every eating item is in a deficiency of nutrition. So that is
See,
why I'm asking.
nutrition deficiency will be there if there is. That's what you have to increase soil fertility. Now, if you increase soil carbon, soil fertility, definitely plant will intake all kind of nutrition in it, isn't it? And the data you said one apple is 20. I don't know. It is just for saying. I actually don't believe such data. Okay, it is not like that. Yeah,
Everybody.
some kind of nutrition may be reduced, but it is not one apple is equivalent to 20 apples. I think that is really very far from the reality.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Hello. Hello.
मैडम आपका आवाज कट हो रहा है. आई एम नॉट एबल टू लिसन यू प्रॉपर्ली.
Sir, millet can be one of the options for
Of
nutritious
course,
food.
yes, millet is not only an option as a nutritious food, but also it is a option as a climate resilient activity, because millets are the crops which have been evolved in India thousands of years, because as I told you, India is undergoing continuous drought, famine, and flood, isn't it? So millets are the only crops which can save us, which have been saving us India for a very long time. Only recent time we have changed our cropping pattern towards other crops like rice and wheat. Okay, rice and wheat basically was never a kind of a major crop in India. Even in the rice growing areas, today's rice growing area, the rice was not a major crop. Okay, so we had to now more emphasis on millet not only for nutrition but also as climate resilient foods. Okay, they also have less water. They also intake less water. Not only climate resilient, they are also drought resilient. They intake less water. So less input, more production, more quality production will be there. More nutritious production will be. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any more questions, please? I think if no more questions, we can stop here then.
Just a bit, Dr. Gauri sir.
Ah.
Now I would like to request Mr. Manik sir, please
Yeah.
propose the vote of thanks for this informative presentation.
Okay.
Yes, sir, sure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today in this enlightening presentation on climate change and its implication for rural India. It is very informative and valuable. Now it's time to extend our heartfelt gratitude to someone who made this session truly exceptional, our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Ravindra S. Gauri, sir. Sir, acquainted us with the direct impacts of the climate change like rising seas, loss of fresh water, ocean acidification, and so on. Sir, enlighten us with the projected rise in the temperature and also added the climate change may likely to benefit the certain crops such as chickpea, soybean, potato in India. Sir, address how to control the climate change through the mitigation, geosciences, and adaptation. And sir talks about the key climate sensitive sectors like agriculture, water, health, and 8 national vision on climate change. Sir also shared some success stories of SLAGs. Dr. Ravindra S. Gauri, your presence and expertise have left an indelible mark on this session, and we are incredibly grateful for the valuable insights you shared with us today. Your profound knowledge in climate change and its impacts has enriched our understanding very much. We also appreciate how you effortlessly engage with our audience, addressing their questions and sharing your experiences. Your ability to connect with the people and simplify complex ideas in is truly remarkable. Dr. Gauri sir, we sincerely thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to be with us today. Your presence has made this session an unforgettable experience for all of us. I also extend my gratitude to every participant in this session and as well as the organizing team and course coordinator for making this session a resounding success. Thank you once again. Over to you, Mesham sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay. So now we'll take a break. We'll go for lunch, and after lunch, immediately we'll have to join at 2:55. Meanwhile, you can enjoy the lunch.